Prison Tales of India's Most Famous. We have Sunetra Choudhury, the author, who's written. Sunetra, will you please come up? And Jairaj Singh in conversation with her. Please, could you come up on stage? Just a very brief introduction about Jairaj. Jairaj Singh is a New Delhi-based writer and journalist. He is the editor of Daily O, India Today's opinion website. Prior to this, he was the editor of Time Out Delhi, and before that, the editor of two papers for the Hindustan Times, HTH and HT Mail. Also, just a few lines about Sunetra. Sunetra Choudhury started her career with Indian Express in 1999, soon after graduating from the Indian Institute of Mass Communication. In 2000, she was sent for Japan's Foreign Press Center Fellowship by the paper. She became Indian Express' youngest deputy chief reporter at 24, and also brought out Newsline, the pull-out section, city section. In 2002, Sunetra joined the launch team of Star News, a 24-hour Hindi news channel. Within a year, she moved to NDTV. After the success of one of her assignments at NDTV covering the 2009 election campaign, she authored Breaking News. Breaking as in with a break. Sunetra also anchors a daily audience-based show called Agenda, the only out-of-studio show of its kind, and a primetime show on student leaders and elections. In April 2016, she got the Red Ink Award, and it's a very prestigious award, for a story on how Indians were adopting disabled children. Jairaj, can I request you to please start the session?
Good evening, Dehradun. Can you hear me? Can you hear us at the back? So, I know it's been a long day, it's been a stimulating day. You have all these wonderful speakers here. But I can assure you this is going to be the most thrilling one. And why? Because Sunetra has written a wonderful, gripping, hard-hitting book on what it's like inside Indian prisons. And so she takes us into, she gives us 13 stories, and there's a misnomer in the book. It's not just about the famous people in India who've gone to jail in recent times, but it also gives you a whole, it gives you a well-rounded sort of, idea about the different kind of prisons and the different kind of treatments of different kind of people. But I wanted to open this sort of discussion, Sunetra, with, the idea of where this book started, because you mentioned that you meet this Romanian woman who's the wife of the arms dealer, Abhishek Verma, and the minute you meet her, you have this epiphany that this is going to be a bigger story than, just a news report for your channel. Could you tell us what made you think that you wanted to turn it into a book?
Thank you, first of all, for saying such lovely things about my book. So what happened was that, I got this call from this beautiful woman. She's this 6-foot tall, blonde woman. And as soon as she meets me, she tells me, oh, it's so good to see you. I'm talking to someone who can speak English after years. So I was like, yeah, okay. And then she says that, so I was telling her, she said, yes, I know who you are because I've been watching TV. So I was like, you're watching TV in jail? And she said, of course I had an LCD TV in my cell. And I said, LCD TV in your cell? So she said, yeah, I had a LCD TV on my cell. And so I said, are you serious? Like, you were in jail, you had an LCD TV. She said, yeah. So I've watched everything. I watched Star World Premiere, all the English movies. I've watched everything. That's all we would do, watch TV. So I was like, that doesn't sound like prison, does it? So anyway, so then she would say, yeah, I fought to have, a Western commode in my loo as well. And then she said, do you want to see? I'm like, today I'm wearing nice. She was wearing a beautiful designer dress. And she said, shall I show you pictures of what we were doing in jail? And then she took out her phone and she showed me these official photographs taken by the official photographer of Tihar jail, which showed her wearing Louis Vuitton shoes and her husband wearing, like she said, oh, that's the latest, that's spring 2015 collection. So it's a little dated because I was inside. And then she started, so I was like, how did you do that? And then she started telling me, because they're very rich, that how for everything, their lawyers had enough money to petition the courts and they would get permission to maintain themselves. And because they were under trials, apparently the rule book says that you have the right to maintain yourselves. The only problem is everybody else who's inside, they don't have money like Anka does, so they don't even have proper food. But if you're rich in jail, there are enough rules to
Right.
do that.
So, you know, you've, in your book, you interview some of the most, you know, influential names. They're ministers, they're, you know, people who you regularly read, you know, making sort of their ministers and, you know, important people. How did you manage to, like, crack them open? Because you're not only just telling us how they bend the rules in prison, but you're also telling us, you know, some of the very sordid details about their lives. How did you manage to, like, get them to fess up?
I think that what you realize when you meet people who've been to jail is that it is for everyone, whether you're rich or you're poor, it is life changing. Whether you've spent 10 years or 21 years, the person who spent the longest time is a tandoor murderer. All you school kids, you wouldn't know, but in 1995, a man was sent to jail because he murdered his wife. He got jealous, he murdered his wife, and he, after murdering her, because he got really angry, it was a crime of passion, he took her to his restaurant, the body to the restaurant, and hacked her body and put it in the tandoor and tried to have a perfect murder that way. And he's like featured in the book. But whether you've spent like him 21 years and are still in jail, or if you've only been there 4 days like Amar Singh, it really is life changing. And I think those who can write, everybody comes out with a life changing experience and they all have stories to tell. But everybody is not able to communicate that. They're so traumatized, Jairaj, that they are unable to put it down. But they all have books in them. Like there are two people who I really wanted to be part of this book. One is Monica Bedi. Do you all remember Monica Bedi? Like Abu Salim, do you know Abu Salim? So Abu Salim's girlfriend is Monica Bedi, who was this Bollywood star, like starlet or a B-grade star. So she was just the girlfriend, and poor thing had to spend years in jail. And I wanted her story. And she kept telling me, no, but Sunetra, I want to tell that story. Fair enough, right? She didn't want me to. But a lot of people like Amar Singh, they want to forget it, but they do have these stories. So they're dying to talk to someone because I think it's therapeutic. And I think the only thing that I had to work at, Jairaj, was in convincing people that trust me. I won't make it my story. I promise, because I feel it, because I really felt it. You know, like somebody asked me that day, don't you think it's unfair in your book that the person who got tortured, right, Wahid, he got tortured and
I want to get to Wahid, you know, in a
no,
bit.
but I just want to say that, don't you think it's unfair that Amar Singh was cribbing about having the same mug to use in the potty and also to drink from, whereas people are getting tortured?
And they don't even get water to drink, you know, and or they have to endure so much to drink.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Like Kobar didn't have water to drink. But I just want to say, for Amar Singh, having that same mug was as traumatic. And I understood that. So,
But
that's
you know,
it.
I while reading the book, Sunetra, I found that, you know, that there seems to be like no rules in prison. It's like you can, you know, it's like you say that you can get the latest iPhone 7 in prison. You can, you know, there are all kinds of drugs available, weapons, you know, things that you can't even fathom available. It's like a separate economy market there. But how do these rich people manage to subvert the law? How does it work?
I think that if I went to prison, I would also figure out a way of monetizing, like something, like Peter Mukherjee, he's figured out that he can teach English or
What about the Arushi, the case, the Talwars?
Exactly.
What you know, you mentioned that because they're successful dentists, they work out a way that they start treating people, and they can earn money in that sense, and then they can treat and look after themselves. Is that so? Or
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you know, as journalists, Jairaj, we always have that outrage newspaper reports, right? Recently there was that story about how Shahabuddin was taking selfies in jail with the phone. And Pappu Yadav was telling me how he wanted, he wished he had TB, tuberculosis, because if you have TB, then you're given mutton soup. First of all, if you're also allowed to go to hospital, and if you go to hospital, the jail hospital, or if you're sent to hospital with tuberculosis, then you can meet whoever you want to. So everybody uses, it's not like they don't have rules. I know you said that there are no rules in
it seems
jails.
like it, because you can bribe officials. You can even, if you're rich, then you can have many servants or helpers around who can do your cleaning and stuff. So it just seems like there is a way to game the system, and the rich and influential manage that easily.
The rich and influential manage that, and for everybody else, there are too many rules which are killing them. Like, look at this rule, and I found that fascinating, that everything, all the rules are designed to complicate and torture you. So,
So as Anka says in the book, that if you've committed crime for like 66 rupees, then you get a harsher treatment than if you have for 60,000 crore or something like that, right? Or something.
she was referring, of course, to Sahara Shri Subrata Roy, and the fact that he has a Supreme Court sanctioned, air-conditioned cell. It wasn't even a cell. It was the the conference room, which was converted into a special area for him, where he would have guests from outside, because the Supreme Court ordered that he could meet whoever he wanted to, because he had to carry out important business.
So you had air-conditioned conference room inside Tihar jail.
With internet and fax.
Fabulous. Even I don't have that at home.
Exactly. Well, and just to contrast it with someone from Doon School, which is Kobad Gandhi, who I think the Doon School Old Boys Network has been really working and trying to lobby for him. But despite all the they all got together and put enough money together, everybody, can you imagine? So on one hand, you have Anka ordering the latest Louis Vuitton and the latest designer outfit to wear and maintain herself. And you have Kobad Gandhi, a 70-year-old man, who has to get his old school network to donate money so that he can get a cataract operation in jail. And he has an irritable bowel syndrome. So the little bit of pocket money that you earn from working in jail as a convict, which is 2,500 rupees, most of that money for him goes in buying Bisleri, like mineral water bottles. So the kind of contrast that you have is just stark and shocking and heartbreaking. And it was just all those stories, and everybody has different stories. And you said in the beginning that there are 13 stories. And right at the beginning, as a writer, I was very, very afraid that they're going to be similar stories. Because everybody goes to jail, and if you're rich and famous, you're going to subvert the rules to your convenience. Or if you're not rich and famous, you're going to get tortured the same way. The thing about jails is everybody has a different story.
But your book is not just about the rich and influential. There is another side. There are several stories about why did you? I mean, I feel like there was a shift in the idea while you were working on this book, that you had to incorporate other stories. And is that so? And what were you trying to? Not everybody is rich and influential. And so why did you choose them, and how did you go about that?
So what happened was, as you said, I started with Anka and this woman calling me on the phone because she'd come out. She wanted, because I report in a CBI, and she wanted some story leads, and then it went on to a story. And I just thought that I will just get all the rich and influential people. But while I was working on that book, and you hear about all these people who are petitioning the courts and who are trying to help themselves out, I realized the stories of how, for many others, jail can be an absolute hell. Apparently, if you happen to be a transgendered person and if you go into jail, there's a very good chance you will be raped. There is a very good chance you will be raped. And there are people who have been gang raped in jail over and over again, and nobody wants to listen to them because they are transgenders. It doesn't happen that much to women. It, the good thing is that you don't hear it happening in Tihar or anything like that. But if you're a transgendered person in jail,
But you do mention that even masculinity is an issue. You have to. It's a show of masculinity, and anybody slightly, that any variance is you're frowned upon, and you're called all these names. I think Pappu Yadav keeps saying, things. I think basically, it's a hard place because you also mentioned that that there's this gang of blade bazi, in jail. So you have a set of people who carry blades, and they're like, because everyone has to earn in a way that they become like official hitmen of sorts. So it sounds like this. I mean, in the stories which are not about the rich and influential, you're covering, a I think the juvenile system. You have people accused of terror blasts, and which I think brings me to the next question on Wahid, which you mentioned. He's wrongly accused of the 7/11 blast, and you mentioned that that was one of the most chilling, the hardest piece of writing that you had to do in the book. Why? Can you tell us about the story and why you found it to be the hardest?
so imagine, you start out just doing all these fun people, and it'll be just about how people got away with designer things and all of that. And then you meet someone, because what happened was that people start telling you. So I looked for someone from the transgender community to tell that story. How can you just tell all the fun stuff and not tell what really happens for everybody else as well? And then someone said, you know, you have to meet this guy. He has come up, he is an English teacher. He went in when he was in his 20s, and he's now out after a decade. And why he's fascinating as a jail story is because even after coming out, all that he's focused on is how to get everybody else who's inside jail out as well. And what's amazing is that we don't realize how much torture is part of the jail story even now. If you don't do what they tell you to do, how you're tortured. So he tells these horrific stories of how, it's the whole homeland thing again, of waterboarding, of having things shoved up their cavities, of having police officers bringing their female members of their family into the police station and trying to influence them to say that if you don't do what we are telling you to do, then we'll offend your wife, or they bring in your elderly father and say we'll disrobe him as well. So, and the thing is that when someone is telling you their stories of having gone through that every single day, and they tell it to you in great detail, and it's not like he's saying, this happened to me. He tells you, this police officer who was posted here in this police station, from this year to that year, he was taking me in this car, and that's when he did this. And I remember this, and he didn't think it was poetic because he's not a writer, but he said to me, so I was picked up, and it was 14th of August, and they tortured me the entire day. They hung me up, and they beat me and all that. But they let me go at night. So next day, it was 15th August, so we went and sang the Indian anthem. He says that. And it's not like he's saying that because he wants to make a point to a writer that I was singing it even though I was
being accused of being a terrorist.
Of being a terrorist. And you know what's amazing? So I said to him, now that you're out, Wahid, like, do people, because that's what we believe, right? That's the thing. They always surprise you. I said, now that you're out, all your other neighbors and your school kids, he's a teacher. He's a class 7 or 8 teacher. I said, do they think that you're a, because many people feel, right, that he got acquitted because they didn't have enough evidence, but he's still, there must be something, that's why he was in for so long. And you know what he said to me? He said to me, Sunetra, I never had a problem with my neighbors. I was sitting with my Hindu neighbor watching TV when the breaking news ran of the blast. The only people who don't trust me are the government, which is why when he went back to the government school where he teaches, they still haven't started paying his salary because they're like, what if they appeal against you? His neighbors trust him. So that's reassuring that his neighbors welcomed him back into the community. He's now had another baby because when he went to jail, he had a newborn, so he never saw that newborn. He's now had another baby, so there is a life afterwards. But the sad part is, his life is also now centered around getting people out of jail. So it's all jails, you know, it's like a circle. And he knows he's not going to win that fight. He's not going to get compensation. No one's going to say sorry to him. They think that he should just be happy that he's got off.
What was ironic was he was also being accused of cases while he was while he was in custody, he was also being accused of other stuff.
That's the thing with Kobad. A
Sorry,
70-year-old man
that's
who's accused of being a Maoist, and he's in jail. And he said the cases against him were, he was caught in Delhi. So what happens with, and the thing is, we all as journalists, I'm at fault over here. I'm at fault because I'm a news reporter. And I'm a news reporter who believes the police authorities. I believe them.
I will get to being a journalist and these stories, but I would really like you to actually read a short bit from your book so that people can know what we're talking about.
So the
Khushi one?
Yeah. Please bear with me. I write better than I read. It was in June 2012 when Khushi's chelas would witness the most gruesome episode of her life. It all started harmlessly enough on the morning of 4th June. By the way, Khushi is the transgender I was telling you about. The group was near Delhi Gate in Ajmer when the police stopped their auto, telling them that vehicles weren't allowed further. The constable, who the FIR names as Bhavani Singh, said they could take the auto if they paid him 50 rupees. It's hard to say if they had paid this cash as bribe, Bhavani Singh would have gone his way, continuing in his path of petty corruption. As it happened, they argued, and slowly, Bhavani's insults became worse. तू कहाँ से आई है? किन्नर है या लड़की है? Where have you come from? Are you a girl or are you a trans? He wanted to know. The auto rickshaw driver, the chelas, the police all got involved, and suddenly Bhavani Singh started trash talking. Khushi mentions that it is believed that kinnars or hijras are only good for entertaining. But it was when Bhavani's language progressed to wandering hands, her chelas got enraged. Tu ladki asli hai ya nakli? Bhavani Singh said, and reached out and touched Khushi's breast. A physical fight started with Khushi's chelas and the police personnel. The PUCL report of the incident quoted onlookers who said, Khushi's group got aggressive and beat up the police constable badly and hurled abuses at them. And they were rescued by the nearby shopkeepers, and all 8 were taken away to the Dargah police station. Out of all her chelas, Zoya was the loudest and was fighting the most. Khushi said she had to intervene to make them stop arguing and agree to move it to the police station. But that turned out to be a wrong decision. As soon as we went in, they started beating us. And here's where the law or lack of its coverage for transgenders plays a part. According to the Code of Criminal Procedure, you have to have women personnel present in order to handle a woman inmate. Khushi and her chelas identified with women, but their hijra status meant that they didn't have that protection under law. The male policemen started hitting us as well. Zoya wanted to save me, so they hit her a lot. The physical abuse was just one part of it. The case hadn't even been registered and processed yet, and all of them were paraded in front of the media. The police said these people hit them. So everybody accepted it, and no one was willing to listen to any of us. It was a day of abuse and humiliation. The arrest meant they had to surrender all that they had, 87,000 rupees in cash and jewelry. They were also treating them like slaves. The FIR notes Khushi as saying, some touched my cheeks, some touched my hair, and some my waist. If I spoke, I was beaten. At one point, one constable apparently told them, walk the ramp and show us. It was as if the bored men in khaki had got some comic relief with this arrest. When they were bored of these games, they moved to more dangerous ones. At 11:30 p.m., they were summoned one by one. They hit you, so you hit them with chakki ki aata ka patta, she heard one telling the others. It was an individual beating session. When Khushi went in, she saw Bhavani Singh and Vijay Singh Choudhury, and she started talking in English to explain what had happened. She thought if only she could convey to them that she was educated, she would be able to diffuse the situation. But that didn't work. They beat her even more so. At midnight, Sub-Inspector Lakshmi Narayan Singh left her warning that he would be back later that night.
You know, this is a terrifying moment, and it just gets worse. And but you know, I after reading the story, I actually, Sunetra, went and started reading some news reports on this incident, and I realized that there was nothing on it. There was the depth and the clarity with which you bring out an ordeal. You talk about the issues that this case raises were not there in the media at all. And so, you know, now you've been a journalist now for like almost 2 decades, and I was wondering, where is this lack of compassion that journalists and the media show in writing about these such important stories when it comes to prison incarceration and, you know?
You know, I don't think that it's lack of sensitivity, because I know those journalists. I have been one of those journalists. My best friend is a crime reporter. I think it's a coping mechanism. I think that, you know, the only way you can report as a crime reporter day in and day out with such horrific stories is if you switch that feeling part of yourself. So what you do is you go and meet the person, but if every day you hear these stories, you will lose your mind. So you just hear the quotes, and then you just hear what the police tell you.
This over-reliance of this one source, the police, which is a big issue with crime reporting in general.
Exactly.
You know, there is no investigation, which you do in this book. You know, I mean, there's reportage, you go and talk to people. We seem to gloss over these events, you know.
Completely. You know, Wahid told me one thing. I was telling him, I felt Wahid is one story which obviously just kept, and Khushi's as well, because as you said, nobody reported on them. So Wahid said, you know, everybody reported me as a terrorist. So I thought, yeah, that's what the police would have said. So he said, but why didn't they do some investigation? So I said, we would only do investigation once the trial started. He goes, but listen, why don't you silly journalists ask a basic question? So I was like, what? He's like, which terrorist have you heard who, after planting a bomb, and the bomb goes off, right? Then appears for questioning every single day, which is what happened in this case. Every day, because these people were marked simi men. So every day the police would say, ab aao thane mein, aap logon se poochtaach
And he would
karni hai.
tell his wife that, okay, I'm going to the police,
Yeah.
and there was like a ritual of sorts. You know?
So he was like, why don't you think about it? It's a logical question. Which terrorist plants a bomb, watches it kill people, and then sits around and then appears for questioning every day? And I'm like, of course. But you see, the problem is we don't have access to that information. I'm just trying to play the other side now. That we wouldn't know, we would just be shown there is some arrest, we found some mastermind of Simi, and we are interrogating them. That's all that reporters know. So it is a vicious circle, but I think one thing that I've just learned, and I hope, if anything, this book teaches all of us, is that I've learned that I am never just going to believe the police or the CBI. But you know, Jairaj, it keeps us happening. I really, because I feel responsible. I feel like, you know, I think it's part of the training also we had as journalists. When there, I remember when I started in Indian Express, one of the things that the sub-editors told me as a trainee reporter was, I wanted to put a bite, a quote of an accused person. And they removed it. So I said, why? They said, no, you can't use an accused person's bite. Because they said that, you know, you have the police version, why should we give them a platform? That's what I was told. We don't give a platform to a rapist or a terror accused. Why should we give them a platform? So this is the
The
kind of...
innocent until proven guilty doesn't exist because somewhere someone's made a judgment.
Yeah.
But you know what I found extremely refreshing about your book is that the self I, the I in your book is not there. I mean, it's it's only there to as a purpose, literary purpose to move the story, but you're not consciously editorializing issues. You're not trying to give your own viewpoints or, you know, just try and bring about. So was that a conscious decision? Was that the reporter in you trying to give the story as much play as it can be, or was that conscious?
I know that TV anchors are supposed to be full of themselves, but no, no, no. If you have these kind of crazy, interesting characters, like who wants to know what I think? They were telling, you know, I knew that they had trusted me to tell their story with as little judgment as possible. And I just thought it was really brave of them. I knew that at the end of it, if you ask me, do you think Peter Mukherjee is in the book, by the way.
He was the CEO of Star, and then moved on to INX, where I worked at one point. But he was this basically this billionaire CEO who is now in the news for being in jail.
Yeah, so if anybody asks me now, you've interacted with him and you've interviewed him and all, do you think he's done it? Because people get asked that all the time. Do you think Arushi's parents did it? Do you think Peter Mukherjee knew? Do you think so? I don't know. I'm not an investigator. I just wanted to tell the story of what they did in jail, not only from their perspective, but also from the police. I tried to get it from the other perspective as well, like how the police saw them, but it's basically a prison diary. What happens to people when they are locked up and how they survive.
So obviously a lot of research went into this, a lot of, speaking to officials, not just the people who are in prison, but, and so I want to know how you managed your regular job. You worked on the book, and you're a mother. In fact, there's a very lovely moment. The only moment which actually brought a smile to my face was when you were, in the 2G case where, you're following the whole Anil Ambani at the CBI headquarters, and you have to do this live from the car, and your son Neil is there, and he makes these gurgling sounds. He was much younger then. And so you had to keep popping sweets, in his mouth. I think I think that's the lightest moment.
I had to mention that because it was the Raja story. A Raja, he's just before he went to jail, and the story is basically how I think anyone who's dealt with a young kid knows. My baby was like 9 months old, and so I had to do a phone interview, and so he would keep. When you're on the phone or anything like that, you can't have baby sounds there in the background. So I had a packet of gems. So I would like pop the gems one after the other while I was giving my phone report. But yeah, the research part it took a lot of time, but it was basically, that's not, there's no, it's not because of anything great I did. It's just that these people took out time. Like Pappu Yadav would sit with me every morning at 6:30 or 7, and because he spent so much time in jail, I think he's most of his adult life, and I think he's back in jail now.
I'll get to Pappu Yadav later, but I wanted to know that there's there's so much torture, and this the 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 judges seem cruel, the police inside seems, the guards seem cruel, and there's this, all this is happening. And I mentioned the journalists in sense, sort of desensitized, but why does the entire system seem so desensitized to, after all, they are human beings, and so, this that basic compassion is missing in all these, and so I just thought that, is, and yet prison life is all about hope, and, of surviving, and of time, which is, this, the way, the time becomes such an important thing. When you're in prison, you're locked, you're behind bars, you have nothing to do. Everybody, you have only your demons to deal with. How does, how does the system play out?
I think you're right. It's what else do you do when you stuff in 6,000 people into a placement for 3,000 people, which is Tihar, right? So you have your systems, you're supposed to have Vipassana area. There have been lots of reforms as well, of course, they try. But if our criminal justice system is designed in such a way where, there are these stories of people who have been left languishing in jail because no one would come and pay their bail money of a couple of thousand rupees. There's no one at home to come and pay. So you just hang around. So because of that, there's so much overcrowding. So, I mean, there are just degrees and degrees of neglect.
But
And
it also leads to somebody who's there for a smaller crime, largely learning about a bigger crime. And basically, I think one of the case studies, I think JP it is,
Yeah.
who says that he, all that prisoners speak about is bigger crimes, how to, like, they conducting crime, how they committed so many murders, but they got caught for one. And he says that I know now how to commit crime, how to commit a crime and get away with it. So
yeah, for sure. JP was fascinating. By the way, JP is the only person who, he and a juvenile are the only people who are anonymous. They didn't want to be identified because there's too much, obviously, there's too much of, he feels that his clients will totally reject him if they know of his past of having been in jail. And he runs a modeling agency. But what's interesting about him is that the first thing that struck me was when I went to meet him to get him to agree to be part of my book, this man walked in and he tells him, okay, hang on, and he wanted to walk me to my car. So he said, do you know who that person is? So I said, no. He goes, that's Bharti Yadav's husband. Now, for anyone who's not following news that very well, like, we are obsessed with it, obviously. But Bharti Yadav is Vikas and Vishal Yadav, the Nitish Katara killers. DP Yadav, notorious DP Yadav's son and nephew. So DP Yadav's daughter is Bharti Yadav. And Bharti Yadav became a huge story for all of us because she was, of course, seeing Nitish Katara, which is why there was that honor killing. DP Yadav got very angry and his sons, that's why, murdered Nitish Katara. So her husband was right there meeting JP. So I said, oh my God, Yadav brothers, they're like notorious, right? They've been part of the Jessica Lal case and this. He goes, they're actually nice guys, So I was like, who calls murderers nice guys? But you know why he said that? Because I think if I went to jail and Manu Sharma, as much as we all feel the kind of hate and strong feelings that we all have for someone who murdered Jessica Lal, I think if you're in jail, and JP tells me when he didn't know anyone in jail, he was literally living next to feces. He would sleep. There are people who've been in jail so long, they didn't have space to sleep. So there is a Dalit man who spent decades in jail, and he never slept lying down because there was no space. Imagine that. So he only slept sitting up. So if you're so abused there, and if I go to jail and I'm abused like that there, and someone comes to me, Manu Sharma comes to me and says, I like you because I saw you on NDTV and I like you. So I'm going to make sure that you get good food and you get a okay place to sleep. Even I'll think Manu Sharma is a nice guy. So it's all relative. Who are we to judge people? I don't think I'm confident enough to say that my moral high ground, which made me say, no, I don't want Manu Sharma to be in my book. Because I said that. Someone said, do you want to have Sanjeev Nanda in your book? And I was like, I don't think I want to give space to him in my book. But if I went to jail and Manu Sharma was nice to me and gave me food or gave me a place to stay where I couldn't and I was desperate, maybe I would say that he's a nice guy. And so the experiences are so horrific that people who, that's why Amar Singh comes out and he says that it's jail which made him say Amitabh Bachchan is a horrible man. And he's saying that I'm waiting for the Panama Papers to play out because I'll then visit Amitabh Bachchan in jail. But of course.
His once best friend. Why don't you read a little bit about JP? You want to drink some water first?
Okay, yeah, sure. JP, which way? Or we've chosen the other one, no? No, the other one is the Sushil Sharma.
Sorry, on Sushil Sharma, the tandoor killer.
Sushil at no point denies that he killed Naina Sani. What he does deny is that he chopped her body into pieces so that it could be cooked in the tandoor to become the perfect murder. The tandoor was at his new restaurant, Baghiya Barbecue, at the Ashok Yatri Niwas Hotel in Connaught Place, close to their home as well as to his old hangout of Western Court. It was an investment he'd made with 5 other shareholders. But this incident ensured that it shut down just 8 months after it was started. After all, the goriest details emerged from there as the post-mortem report reveals. Intestines exposed to outside with portions of other internal organs in the abdomen. Thigh was chopped off 28 centimeters below left. Leg was chopped off 23 centimeters below the knee. Distal phalanges in the hand missing, chopped off. Sitting across Sushil Sharma and knowing these details brings the awe-inspiring realization that human beings are capable of the most unimaginable things. Sushil, however, cites the 2013 Supreme Court judgment which said no opinion could be given as to whether the dead body was cut, as dislocation could be due to burning of the dead body. There is no recovery of any weapon like chopper, which could suggest that the appellant had cut the dead body. In other words, if he did indeed chop her up, the police didn't find the weapon that was used, and so this wasn't conclusively proved. Sushil claims that it was the impact of the heat that made her limbs fall apart. After getting his staff's help to put her body inside Baghiya restaurant's tandoor, Sushil made his getaway. Someone raised an alarm about a fire in the restaurant and the beat constables were already on the scene while Sushil made his way to the Gujarat Bhavan where he spent the night. The next day he went to Jaipur, from where he moved on to Tirupati. I did prayashchit there, he said, getting his head tonsured in an apparent act of atonement for this sin. But while he was atoning, he also got in touch with a lawyer friend and managed to get 14 days anticipatory bail from the Madras High Court. Even in that era of limited media outlets, the outrage was tremendous. How could the judiciary give this privilege to such a sadistic killer? The press was waiting in huge numbers for any lawyer to emerge in Chennai, he recalled. And so, on 10 July 1995, exactly a week after he'd killed his wife, Sharma was shown being arrested in Bengaluru. After consulting my lawyer, I approached the police and so they made it look like an arrest, he said. IPS officer Maxwell Pereira led the Delhi police team which landed with great fanfare to take Sushil Sharma back to the capital so he could stand trial. But the moment was so intense that it seems to have made everyone go overboard. Sharma hadn't even been cuffed yet, and Pereira announced, "I will ensure that he is hanged." Maybe at that very moment my fate was sealed. My case was open and shut, he said to me.
Do you think that, writing, I mean, you were interacting with them and on a regular basis, but once the story is published in its finality, once they read, do you think that there'll be, do you think that things will change? I mean, do you feel like they'll read and get back to you, those, some of the people that you've written about, do you think?
Yeah. I'm not looking forward to seeing everybody again. I understand that. These are such personal stories. Anchor, I didn't realize that I had said that the CBI thinks that she's a con woman. So when she read the piece, because otherwise her piece is, I really empathized with her as a woman, and I really liked her. She's fun and she's sassy and she opened up. But she called me up and she's like, "Why did you call me a con woman?" And I said, "I didn't call you a con woman. I said that the CBI thinks of you as a con woman." And so imagine that. This is so sensitive, right? Because, for us, it's just a great story. For them, this impression could impact the judiciary and send her back to jail. And that's what they're scared of. So Sushil, who is now on the 21st or 22nd year of his prison term, is fighting very hard to come outside now. And obviously, he trusted me with the story, but if he thinks I haven't projected this, for example, I don't even know how he liked the fact that I call him the tandoor murderer. I wasn't meeting him and saying, "Hello, tandoor murderer." I was just saying, "Sushil ji." I'll just tell you a silly story, really. So I would meet him, and a person has been locked up for 21 years. The world has changed. So he's like, "Ek din chalte hai Machan." That's where we
Machan is a popular restaurant in Delhi.
Yeah. And he goes, "Mera man kar raha tha." Because I realized that he doesn't have any friends, right? And he opened up to me, so he thinks that maybe I'm his friend. And I understand that, but I can't be his friend.
You won't have tandoori chicken with him.
No, but that's what the thing is. So we would meet, and we would keep talking over coffee and meals, and I would say, "Do you want to eat something?" And he would be out on parole, so he wanted to live with us. So he'd be like, "Yeah," he would eat something, he would, and he had paneer tikka one day, okay? You know where that joke is going. So I went home and my husband said, "So how was it? Like, what did you?" So I said, "No, yeah, we had coffee and he had some paneer tikka." He goes, "Tandoor." How could you have? I'm sorry, this is a terrible, terrible joke, but I'm just saying that I think people's reaction to it, and I think that people would react to me that way, and that scared me,
Right.
Like I was glad that I was finished the story. I don't know. I don't want him to be upset with me.
But of all the cases that you write about, I think the case of the 16-year-old, which you just told me that it was almost not going to be included in the book, about this young boy who gets falsely accused of rape. I thought that that's a very modern story. That's a story that a lot of us can relate to, who are on social media. Our relationships, suddenly us being scrutinized, what we are on these WhatsApp, these relationships that we're having, the drinking that we do. Could you talk a little bit about that story? Because that for me was the most unusual one in this collection.
Again, that was a story that I went looking for, because, okay, I know that I wasn't ticking boxes, but I was just wanting to tell the whole jail experience. So I wanted the transgender story, and I wanted to know because the Mercedes, do you all, if you follow the news, there was a story about this modern school boy who drove his dad's Mercedes and killed someone. And so I got in touch with his parents. And I said that, what did your son go through? Can I tell his story? They didn't agree. They said no. Obviously, the case was very. So I kept looking for people. I kept calling up the counselors and I kept calling up all the homes and saying, is there anybody who has been through this, who can just tell me their story? Obviously, you couldn't identify them because they're juveniles. So you can't, you know. So this person came up in the story and he had gone to jail for rape when he was 17. And what was amazing about that story was that it was a Facebook crime. You know, the entire case details, they talk about who sent the first friend request. Was it the girl or was it him? Who sent the first WhatsApp message? The case also went into Instagram accounts to show how she had a tattoo of him in an intimate part of her body. And then those tattoo pictures were presented, the Instagram pictures of that, and those pictures were presented in court as evidence. So it was really a modern day love story. But of course, you know, even that, Jairaj, gives only one side of the, like that was one story, but there are of course horrendous stories of sexual abuse in children's homes, right. which thank God my subject, I asked him, were you abused at all? He wasn't abused. But there are other people who are, you know, because they're children in these homes, and his home had children who were between 16 and 18. And he was telling me how a lot of them were people who were very well off and who had had fights, and, you know, and a lot of them, because of the tougher rape laws, there is now zero tolerance. Even though there is no zero tolerance for a transgender's rape, but for everybody else, there's zero tolerance. So even if the stories don't make that much sense, a lot of the kids are now ending up in juvenile jail. So for me, it just gave an instead of like, you guys are about 15, 16 years old, right? So yeah, 16 years old. So a young kid like yourself going to jail and going through the trial, they don't call it trial, they call it inquiry proceedings, but going through the whole trial process as children, and everybody in their class getting to know, and how that boy actually left Delhi. After he was acquitted, he had to move to Bangalore. But
the stigma remains, and you've been through this ordeal. But on a lighter note, tell me, like, would you ever think of writing a fictional? Would you like do an Orange is the New Black for the Indian audience? I mean, I think that you've covered. I don't think that you're done with prison stories. I feel like it's such a subject that it also pulls you in, right? There's so much, and there are these characters upon characters, and they're, like we talked about this tribe of people in jail called Bladebazi, who I thought was fascinating. They are like official
slashers.
They're slashers. They're hitmen.
So here's a thing that they said. They said that if you want to know who's been to jail, you look closely at people's faces, and a lot of people have a mark like this. They have a cut, and that's basically markings. So it's inevitable. And if there are these group of young boys who are the slashers, so you pay someone 2,000 rupees and he'll go and slash your enemy. But what is inevitable, I was told, is if you order a slash on someone, like a blade bars to hit you, they will come back and get you as well. They will. So, and if the way of rewarding these kids, because then you would be punished. If you slash someone, you'd be punished. So you'd be sent to the punishment ward. So how they would be rewarded is the person who ordered the thing would then take care of them for the next couple of months.
Wow. While reading the book, and I read it in the last couple of days, I was in this Kafkaesque, world where I felt that, what if I just go to prison right now, and, it could be for anything. It could be for, just a white collar crime. It could be something. What if I just land up in jail? I said, Sunetra, what advice would you give me? The book has a lot of, hacks, on what takes, several times they're given good advice. JP is, for instance, told not to speak in Hindi. Somebody's, told that if you get a phone in jail, you're not supposed to take that off. What would you like? What would be the 5 things that you would advise somebody to be very careful of?
I would say suck up to people. Definitely be nice to the dada in the jail. Figure out who they are and figure out what skill you have which you can, just like figure out who the dada is and go suck
Find
up
a
to them.
protector
Yeah,
and find
definitely.
somebody who can help you out, who you can relate to. Should we open it up now to the audience? I think it's, let's open it up to the audience. I think enough of me.
Hello.
Hello.
So you were just saying that how often people will ask you about the different people that you met and whether you think this is true or that person really did that or not. So you said your book is just a diary, a prison diary. So what I want to ask you is that at some point when you were writing the book, did you feel that you should also write about the truth? At some point, did it inspire you or did it instigate your conscience to write the truth about these cases?
I think I tried to tell the truth. If you read it, it has, I think. You mean my opinion about these cases?
I don't want to go into I'm not an investigator.
Yeah.
So at
Neither
some
am
point.
I. Seriously, I'm not either.
Yeah, so at some point, did any case strike you so much that you really wanted to find out the truth?
Yeah, Arushi. I do want to find out the truth, but I can't.
If you get a chance, would you write a book again about
Yes.
the truth? Okay.
Yes, if I have more material.
Okay.
Bottom
Thank you.
line is buy the book and figure it out. Okay.
I haven't read the book, but understanding of what it is. And just one question, is there anything called human rights behind bars?
Yeah. That's
is that?
that there is a, what's interesting is that one of the guys, he's in the introduction, called Sunil Gupta. He's the law officer. And when I was finishing the book, he had just retired. So he met me and gave me all the details behind the scenes. And he is the one in charge of making sure human rights are adhered to. And what was amazing is that just before he retired, throughout my career, he'd been lying to us and telling us how no one ever drinks in jail and nothing ever happens. And he retired and he was like, everybody drinks. So yeah.
So clearly no trusting the police for a common man, and definitely not trusting, and I mean, even in the media, how much can you then trust the media as to about a case? Because you've
I
also
don't think it's about the question of trusting the media. I think it's so much that's unwritten. It's so much
absolutely,
that
but
does.
as she said,
and
a lot of the like what media reports is what the
No,
police
but
tells.
I don't think there's a mistrust there, right?
Yeah, it's not a question of not getting. You will get the information, but you might not get the detail.
Yeah, it's
that
not
you
because
will-
media wants to mislead you. They're
of
doing
course
it
not.
in good
Of course
faith.
not.
So you
Yeah.
have
Journalists
to
are the
trust
best people ever.
Exactly. Yeah, we're trying to tell it's not because they want to mislead you or someone's paid them off. Honestly, it's because they don't know any better. There is limited information. That's the only problem. So you can only doubt them or criticize them for not having enough information, not because they want to deliberately mislead you. I think Jairaj as well. I've been a journalist for 17 years. He's been a journalist for 13 years. We only survive in it because we're we're surrounded by good people who just want to tell the truth, just want to tell stories.
That's
Why
right.
would we want to tell, we just want to tell stories. We're surrounded by amazing stories and we just want to tell stories. You can, fault us for not getting the story you want, but you will get stories and they're true stories.
While you were writing this book, since you are a media personality and now you're a writer too, so did the two clash with each other, where sometimes you wanted to tell something but the journalist in you held it back, or the other way around?
Yeah, the journalist in me always wants to go have the big story every day. But like people like Peter Mukherjee were like, this is not for TV, it's for a book. So you can't go public with it.
Is there a last question?
Did you really meet Arushi's parents?
Yes, I did.
How did you feel about your feelings?
My feelings, you know, as a like as two women, what actually fascinated me was that she was wearing ironed clothes, really clean ironed clothes. And I'm like, how does that happen in jail? And that's what fascinated me about Raja as well. His mundu and his shirt were like always beautifully ironed. Like, how does that happen in jail? But if you read the book, you'll figure out how they got privileges. So that's all, I was really curious about that. And of course, they're trying to, you know, they're trying to deal with the whole situation of spending their entire
So
life
that
in jail.
feelings of a parent, feelings of being parent, that was lost completely.
You mean as a parent, how I felt about seeing another parent?
Can I add to that question?
Yes.
I think, I don't know if this is what you're trying to ask, but how did you escape judgment? You know, how did you stop yourself from judging at every point?
You know, you will, and this is why I'm saying you must read the book. And the beauty of this work is that it doesn't give you a judgment. It gives you facts. It tells you the story in a really wonderful
And the book
manner.
is right there.
It's
yeah,
right.
I understand, but as a writer, you know, how when you have these stories with people's impressions, how did you stop? Did you ever have? Did you?
No,
face
you know,
that
I've
as a
had
child?
17 years of experience not judging people. In the sense that I don't, because then I couldn't do my job. So it's, hi.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
My question is that if you're given a chance, what changes you will make for the laws for transgenders?
Oh,
Like as you were
of
I'm
course.
I'm so sorry. I interrupted in between. You
No.
started. As you were reading the story of Khushi, what would be changes like for equality, if you talk about?
Well, I'm not speaking because I've spoken to people in the community. There are so many things which need to be done. For example, the latest bill which has been passed says that they can't decide for themselves whether they are a transgender or not. A bureaucrat and some clerks will decide whether they will examine them physically to decide if they're a transgender. That needs to go now. So there are so many things, but that's one to start with.
Thank you so much.
Hi Sunetra, I'm Nikki Chandam. I'm
Hi,
from Delhi.
Nikki. Yeah.
Your book is so different, and
Thank you.
congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Just wanted to know what are the challenges you had faced while bringing out the stories.
Just getting people to talk to me, just begging them, and making them trust me. Like Amar Singh didn't want to talk. There are two people, as I said, Monica Bedi didn't want to talk to me. She just didn't want to talk to me. R.K. Singh, which I thought was beautifully ironic, right? The police officer and DG of prisons ending up in prison himself.
Is it true that he was very good at badminton? He became a badminton captain, I believe.
In jail?
In Tihar.
Yeah. So, and the other thing, there's a story I know about him, which I then asked him, that he basically, and this always happens, when you get to know, when you've been a police officer, then you know the law and you know the rules. So he fought for the right for the inmates to make phone calls. Because before him, all you could do to get in touch with your family was the weekly mulaqat, which is a traumatic thing. So he fought in the courts and has installed these Vodafone machines in Tihar, which work with the biometric. Imagine that. So every time they would put their biometric, everybody gets 5 minutes, and you can call 2 cleared numbers that are there. So R.K. Sharma got that for everybody, and it's amazing. Can you imagine? If you're in jail, you can speak to someone for 5 minutes every day. So it's
And it took a former police official
Yeah.
to be on the other side of the bars to get that.
Yeah.
There was one student right at the back. That's him right at the back. Last few. I just want to get the younger people to.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
I want to become an author. So how should I start?
By writing every day about, things things you, about your day, about the most interesting thing in your day. Just write like 300, 400, 500 words every day if you can, and try and get that published in your school magazine or send it to newspapers, and you'll figure out if, if first of all send it to people who you like, who will be honest with you, and if they like the story, and then send it out to school magazines or your local newspaper, and you'll figure out when you get better, and you'll do great.
If I may add, please,
Yes.
read lots of books.
Yes.
Because if you read books, you will know what good writing is. That's the best way to be a good writer. That's how you know what good writing is.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, in your books, you have written about the real world. Means recently the Sahabuddin has clicked the selfies inside the jail.
Yeah.
Means that criminals done crime outside the jail. But when they get inside the jail, they get all the facilities, which
Yeah.
common people doesn't get. Have you ever tried to share this information to the government official so that this should be banned, or they should take a major step to stop them?
I'm hoping that I've called up a lot of these authorities, and I'm hoping that they read this and it has some impact. So I've tried to tell that story through the book.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Do you think that media falsely accuse people as terrorists or something like that?
No, as I was trying to tell you, that I don't think the media sets out to, well, I say that now and then I suddenly thought of what happened in JNU. No, okay, you're young, so I'm going to give you the very, very optimistic picture, and the picture of people like me and people in my, organizations like the one I work for, which is NDTV, and the one that Jairaj works for, which is India Today. No, we don't set out to falsely label someone as that. What we do wrong is that we trust, too much trust in authorities, and we don't question enough. So, the only thing that we all need is to have a little bit of, we should always, they always said that it's not rocket science journalism. No, but you really, really always need to be, make sure that you're just being rational and you're asking the right question.
You have
right?
to
Yeah.
always ask the question.
Yeah.
And I feel that, in recent times, that journalists have got a bad rap. Because, it's also impossible to cover all stories, to give you an in-depth account into what's happening. But the journalist's job is primarily to ask questions, and sometimes they're unpopular things. To ask somebody, and you have to constantly go against, even something when good is happening, you have to question it, because you have to have that level of cynicism, to question. So, I think it's really important that we remember that, a journalist is the messenger, and he's only bringing you the information. Some people will give you more. Some people, as readers, you have to also question the journalist, because it doesn't stop with just the journalist.
Thank you.
I think that's it for the questions for today. Thank you so much, Jera. Thank you so much, Sunetra. That was a fascinating session, and I'm glad there were so many questions, and I hope they were all answered. One last thing, Sunetra's book is available on the bookstore, which is right on your left. So if anybody wants to buy the book, she's going to be here for a little bit signing books. We'll do the book signing on the stage itself, so if you could just wait around for a bit. Yeah. So the book's available right here. Thank you again. We also have a literary hangout up now, and also some live music in a bit. So the book signing will be followed by a hangout, which has poetry and story readings, and then of course live music. Thank you so much. And can I call Mr. Harish Bhatt from the Birla Institute of Management and Technology, Greater Noida, up on stage to present mementos to Sunetra and Jairaj. Thank you so much, Sunetra. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jairaj. Thank you. Fantastic. So books are available on the left. Please quickly go buy them, and you can get it signed by Sunetra, who's right here. Thank you.